Part 64. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 634. Garen, where did you take the shampoo? Why can't I find it? Mother Terry's voice came loudly. Galen was sitting in the living room watching TV. An entertainment program similar to a class was being broadcast. The fat host laughed and pulled the stars to the podium and started asking them to answer some weird questions. From time to time, there were rumors outside the venue. Bursts of laughter. Your mother is calling you, why don't you go over? Garen changed the channel with an expressionless expression. You have to ask little Vivian about this. She just washed her hair yesterday. Come here and get it for me. I can't find it, Mom's voice continued. Your mother is calling you, why don't you go over there? Galen stood up and walked to the bathroom to find the shampoo hidden in the drawer under the sink for tries. Isn't this the shampoo your mother wanted? I remember her favorite was the little bottle of Red Griffin shampoo. Hessas continued to work tirelessly. I said what shampoo my mother used, why do you remember so clearly? Garen finally couldn't help it anymore. But the scent is wrong. Really, you have to believe me, I am right. Galen. What I want is not this kind of shampoo. Where is my Red Griffin? Help me find it, Teresa's voice came in time. Garen rolled his eyes and searched in the drawer again, then handed it to Tries, who was full of foam. Do you know the 13 ways to open a drawer? There are also 256 manufacturing methods. I don't care about your drawer manufacturing method right now. Can you tell me something useful? Garen said helplessly. Well, you have to understand that I haven't spoken for thousands of years. My true spirit can talk to you directly in the Mother River. This is simply an adventure among adventures, even if it happens to be hit by a meteor the size of a sesame seed falling from the sky. In your head, the odds are not as high as this, you have to understand. Hessas explained. Do you know? I am always called the messenger of wisdom in Gaian Duo. Everyone is interested in listening to my wise and enlightening teachings. They all praise me and compliment me, so you should feel honored to have me guiding you all the time. That is what countless people dream of. Garen continued to roll his eyes, turned and walked to the living room to continue watching TV. Of course, he was watching TV on the surface, but in fact he was practicing some of the deepening control skills that Hessas had just told him before. Training techniques for hunting void creatures. Before he obtained this set of skills, at the request of Hessas, he hoped not to close the dialogue with him, but to provide vitality at all times so that the two could communicate without hindrance. But now he regrets it. He would never have imagined how intensely excited and moved a bun that had been squeezed for thousands of years would feel at the moment of bursting out. After Hessas revealed his true colors, he could talk endlessly about a vase for half an hour, from its manufacturing process to the various magical vases he had seen, as well as what happened to him because of a certain vase. There are so profound love stories, and even some powerful will stored in a vase in ancient times. In the end, it had to end without a problem because it was accidentally broken by a little maid girl. This kind of nonsense can be used in a truckload. Take it away and never repeat it. Is this what is called one flower, one world? A single flower can connect the entire world. How advanced a chatterbox does it take to reach this level? Garen finally chose to ignore him. If you deal with him from time to time, this guy will become even more energetic. He will constantly ask you what will happen if you eat an apple, what race will be poisoned and killed if you eat an apple, and what kind of secret weapons will the apple have. A deadly threat. There was once a 5-apple cult, which specifically advocated the concept that 5 apples a day can lead to immortality. I said, Hessas. Garen changed the channel and looked at his status bar again. The intelligence attribute did not continue to weaken. The second one was physical fitness. It weakened by 0.1 and is now 2.8. Do you know the fourth history of the coffee table? I once saw in a world that they regarded the coffee table as the supreme holy object and believed that the coffee table contained some kind of powerful wisdom and power. I once saw one of their coffee tables that was 200 to 300 meters high, with a teapot placed on it. The cup can literally accommodate hundreds of people. The name of that country is the Coffee Table Kingdom. Their king calls himself the King of Coffee Tables. The craftsmen who can make the highest level coffee tables are regarded as nobles throughout the country. Countless people sell their craftsmanship to get a job in coffee table manufacturing. Selling girls, clinging to powerful people. Hesaz, I'm not interested in hearing the story of the coffee table kingdom. Garen felt that he finally knew that this guy would be called one of the 42 demon kings. Even he, a peak master of secret martial arts, felt his head was swollen and his sanity was overwhelmed by him. It's a bit unclear and messy. Do you know the 108 origins of the story? Let me tell you, the first one is derived from ancient mythology, and I have personally investigated it. Garen listened to the buzzing sound in his ears and felt that his patience was about to reach its limit. He now regrets extremely why he promised to talk directly to the true spirit of Hesaz in his oath. He never thought that a person could be so talkative. I want to ask, when will the void creatures come over, and when can I start? Garen listened to his own words and was drowned in the endless sound, like pebbles thrown into the sea, even the waves would be thrown into it. Can't afford one. Okay, Garen gave up his plan to communicate with him normally now. He was completely unable to connect this Hesaz with the guy who was crazy about taking his body. For the time being, he continued to pretend to watch TV, and continued to waiting for a possible sneak attack by void creatures. The opponent will weaken him through constant sneak attacks, and then finally let him die naturally. This is the usual practice of void creatures, and it will not cause any backlash from the world's rules, and there will be no trace of it. How to catch the void creature and dig out its core will be left to Hesaz. Galleons are not up to the task of the first step yet. After dealing with the void creature for the time being, take the time to practice and train slowly to achieve the goal. Only after reaching a certain level can one truly become a void stalker. What Galleon lacks now is time, enough time. Void creatures are masters of manipulating illusions and dreams. If they don't have enough ability to distinguish between reality and reality, they can only be slaughtered by them. Galleons now only serve as a bait to lure void creatures to take the bait. He sat on the sofa and watched TV boredly. Jason went hunting with his friends. Little Vivian was shaking her legs in the room, listening to music and reading a book, and Tries would go out to pick up a friend soon, a close friend who came to the town for vacation. Her father, Emma, was typing away at the computer. He was the only one sitting on the sofa, watching TV in broad daylight, and it was a boring variety show that even little Vivian despised. He sat on the sofa boredly, making himself as comfortable as possible. Unknowingly, I felt a little sleepy, as if I was about to fall asleep. The eyelids moved up and down, blinked, and became heavier and heavier. The voice of Hesaz in his ears gradually changed from clear to blurry, and then slowly turned into a buzzing sound like a seal, which gradually became inaudible. I don't know how long it took. Coming. Suddenly a voice suddenly sounded from Garen's heart. He felt hazy, and for some reason he couldn't lift his spirits, as if he was in a semi-confused state. Hesaz's voice rang in his ears. The spiritual will of any intelligent creature will be divided into two parts: main consciousness and subconscious mind. If a person's main consciousness is extremely rational and has strong self-control, then his subconscious mind will become more and more indulgent, and the part of him that is suppressed and controlled by his main consciousness will rebound more violently and obviously. That's who you are. Your main consciousness has strong self-control, which also leads to the fact that when you are unconsciously relaxing in sleep, your subconscious control takes over the body, and you will be in an extremely active and indulgent instinctive state. This is the desire you usually have accumulated. Various desires are instinctively suppressed by your main consciousness, and the reaction of wanting to vent will appear in subconscious dreams. Everyone is a balanced body. You have to understand that. Suppressing yourself and putting yourself in a polarized direction, an unbalanced state of always moving in the direction you want to move forward, is a change. Change requires the natural creation of a new balance, which is the instinct of survival and the law of the universe. Life has always been a cycle of balance. Hessas explained in a long way. What should we do now? Garin whispered. He looked around in a daze. In a daze, he was still lying on the sofa in the middle of the living room, but his white sofa turned into a tattered floral fabric sofa at some point. On his left-hand side, there was still lying down was a little mouse, sleeping soundly. On the TV in front, the face of the singer who was singing looked like an elongated horse face. Only the thick golden necklace around his neck made him remember it deeply. That necklace seemed familiar to him for some reason. Don't worry about anything else, just leave everything to me. Pay attention to your dreams. This is your dream. Look carefully. Hessas's voice began to fade away, becoming fainter and smaller. Garin was sitting alone on the sofa. He was dazed and didn't want to move. An inexplicable sense of laziness filled his whole body. He felt so tired and exhausted that he just wanted to lie lazily on the sofa and continue to sleep. Wow! Suddenly, a frog-like scream woke him up from his daze. Galen opened his eyes suddenly and found that he was lying on the sofa, and Tris was gently covering him with a thin blanket. Tris smiled when she saw that he was awake. If you're tired, sleep more. I'll call you for dinner later. Garin nodded and watched Tris walk away while wiping his hair with a dry towel. You're awake? Hessas's voice came out. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 635. Did you succeed? Garin asked. It's just an ordinary void bug. You're lucky. This guy is not very intelligent. He can only steal the image of life in your dreams and trick you into lowering your vigilance, thereby temporarily paralyzing your nerves. No wonder its plague contamination was relatively low. Hessas said in a tone that you are very lucky. Is this still light? Garin was surprised. He carefully pressed the leather of the sofa with his hands. It was very strong, with delicate texture and slightly cold temperature. They clearly told him that he was not in a dream now. Of course, void bugs are the weakest category of void creatures, which means they are as weak as bugs on the roadside. Sometimes we may trample a lot of them to death unconsciously when we enter and leave the void. Hessas answered naturally. Garin was speechless. He could not imagine how terrifying the ancient Yinduo demon kings were in their heyday. Look down at your ring. After Garin heard this, he lowered his head and looked at his black ring. The black ring inlaid with lines of blood-colored gemstones actually had a small purple-black diamond-shaped crystal piece stuck to it. The crystal piece is about the size of the fingernail of your index finger. Its surface has a texture similar to wood, but it is translucent. Use your right hand to pull the crystal piece off the ring. It looks like it is growing on the surface of the ring, like crops and mushrooms in the land. Picking up the crystal piece and pinching it, Garin smelled it and found a faint aroma of milk. This is the void crystal, also called the core of the void. It is a crystal in the body of void creatures. Some analysts say it is the crystallization of their energy and life, but I personally think that this should be the higher density skeletal deposits in their bodies, but no matter what it is, this thing can lift the debilitating condition in you. Hessas explained. So how do I use it? You can eat it, or you can use magic power to slowly absorb its vitality. The choice is yours. Can I see the corpse of the void bug? Garin was somewhat curious about void creatures. Unfortunately, you can't see it. Most void creatures are just a blurry shadow or mist, and few of them leave corpses after death. Rare. Hessas said casually, perhaps you will have the opportunity to see the kind of void creature that can leave corpses in the future, but it is far from now. Garin thought for a moment, then stuffed it directly into the glove of his right hand, letting it be slowly absorbed by the magic killing hand. Then what? He asked. Then your weakness will not continue, it will be temporarily lifted, and it will be completely lifted after the 5th day. That's it, Hessas answered simply. You can choose which direction to take after that. What direction? The direction of the warlock, secret martial arts training, or summoning control. It's all up to you to decide. Of course, these are just two general classifications. If you want to take the path of secret martial arts training, then you can focus on practicing one secret martial arts and hone your martial arts by constantly hunting void creatures. Your level of secret martial arts has reached a very high level. Even in our time, you could be promoted to general level if it is summon control. Then you can collect the core of the void as the army you summon. In the future, you can even summon the true spirit marks of the ancient powerful in multiple numbers to form an army. To put it simply, these are two general directions. Is it mainly about strengthening individuals, or is it mainly about improving quantity? Didn't I make my choice long ago? Garen replied calmly. Right. Grandeur belongs to the Veya state, the state and city underground Blood Alliance Council Hall. The broad golden domed hall was brightly lit, and there were hundreds of people sitting sparsely in the hall, which could accommodate tens of thousands of people. Standing on the white high platform is a gentle young man wearing white-rimmed glasses. He is wearing a white suit. His hair is pulled back by hairspray and has a charming and gentle smile on his face. Standing on the high platform, he looks like the most calm speaker, has a light aura of style. Facing the buzzing and noisy venue in front of him and hundreds of different eyes, the man looked calm. In response to the recent increasingly rampant activities of the Camarilla, a killing order was issued from above. After repeated warnings failed, these terrorists openly took the most extreme measures to ignore all obstacles, causing tens of thousands of casualties in Victoria. As the governor of the Blood Alliance of Veya, I would like to express my deep regret and sorrow for the deaths of 5 of our compatriots. Master Hongyu was severely injured and his subordinates were hunted down everywhere. I only learned of this news today. Pale, the leader, has issued a general notice that in 2 months, all members of the Ming Party will pursue the secret party with all their strength. Anyone who conceals adultery and assists the secret party will be sentenced to more than 200 years of bloodless imprisonment. I hope you can reflect on yourselves. If there are any violations, they should be dealt with as soon as possible to avoid unnecessary dance parties. The buzzing gradually quieted down, and a bejeweled white-haired old lady, one of the only 3 upper-class vampires in Veya, stood up. In response to the rampant actions of the secret party, I think we should first protect Lord Hongyu's direct blood relatives. They are currently being hunted and assassinated. Why can't our tracking marks find their location? I think there may be someone within the Blood Alliance. People are carrying out interference and sabotage. I think the Blood Alliance Intelligence Department should be thoroughly investigated. After she finished speaking, she slowly sat down, with a young girl supporting her beside her. I agree with MS versus View. Another upper-class vampire stood up and spoke. This is a bright-looking middle-aged man with a strong build, wearing a black suit and dark red tie. As a low-ranking region among the 32 states in the country, our Veya state is not the most important in terms of economic status and geographical population. But even in such an area, we can't find Lord Hongyu's blood relatives. Or even unable to contact them at all. This is undoubtedly a problem of the intelligence department of the Blood Alliance. I suspect that someone may even be using the intelligence department to deceive our investigation. If there is no reasonable explanation for this matter, we will withdraw from the intelligence department. The family forces form their own investigation team. Immediately, these words attracted a series of voices of approval, and a large number of middle-ranking vampires spoke out in agreement. The Blood Alliance was originally formed by the gathering of family power members from various blood clans, and the family power of each blood clan was an integral part of it. If there is really a trend of covering up Goth's withdrawal, then the so-called Blood Alliance will completely become an empty frame. The bespectacled man who was both the governor and the leader of the Blood Alliance frowned slightly. Is it too early to make radical remarks now? Mr. Hendry, although the Blood Alliance has handled this matter improperly, it has always been our strongest support in other matters. We cannot let it be because of a small thing. It is too radical to clamor for the dissolution of the Blood Alliance and withdrawal from the Blood Alliance for minor problems. Regarding the issue of intelligence positioning, I will take measures as soon as possible. The Intelligence Department will conduct a major inspection. I have no control over other states, but we in Vaya the state will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. The date will be within 3 months. The governor said firmly. Okay. Then we will wait for you for 3 months. The middle-aged man Hendry sat down with narrowed eyes and exchanged glances with Ms. Vare, who was sitting on the chair not far away. Half an hour later, the meeting ended, and the crowd walked out of the hall, entered the passage, and headed towards the ground elevator. Hendry was followed by more than a dozen middle-level and lower-level vampires, deliberately lagging slightly behind, and unknowingly walking side by side with Ms. Vare in the crowd. The small groups around the two people gradually moved closer and merged, consciously creating a safe and private environment for the two people. Hendry held a cigarette in his hand, took a puff, and blew out 2 thin streams of blue smoke from his nostrils. It seems that the secret party's tentacles have extended far enough. I plan to ask AI to investigate the situation personally. Lord Hongyu was kind to me 500 years ago. I can't just watch him in danger. Vare was holding a slender silver-white cane and walked tremblingly. Grave Crow L? That's your most powerful general. Is he about to be promoted to a higher position? I remember that she had reached the peak of her rank 120 years ago. It's coming soon, but it's not so easy to get promoted. Maybe there will be hope after waiting 200 years. Hendry shook his head. I will pursue this matter to the end, and I hope you can support me, madam. The governor's attitude is, it's a little unclear. There is nothing we can do about it. 2 of the governor's descendants have switched to the secret party, and one of them was killed by him himself. It was fine before the conflict between the 2 parties intensified, but now that it has intensified, the situation has become complicated. He is already old and can no longer split his blood core to create new descendants. If his family loses another descendant, if something happens to him, his status will be unstable, Vare said with emotion. Hendry nodded in understanding. According to the information I have, there are 15 secret party infiltration points in the state, of which the 3 around Bivent City are the most serious. The witch allies there have submitted an application to control the number of vampires to my family in advance. They are interested in. I am extremely dissatisfied with the increase in the number of secret parties. I have sent the family's strength to investigate, but only at great risks. I need your support, madam. No problem, I will let the people in charge from various places cooperate with you. The towns of Elvin, Bywent, Zilly, Grandeur and Marseille have the largest number of secret parties. This is what my people obtained from within the Blood Alliance. Blocked information. I hope you can have a good result, Vare whispered. I hope so, thank you for the information. Hendry pondered for a moment, nodded, then bit his cigarette butt and led the people, slowly walking towards the other elevator entrance in the passage. Vare looked at Hendry's figure and shook her head slightly. The Ming Party clan has long been accustomed to a gentle and peaceful life and enjoyment. I didn't expect Hendry to be able to clearly state his position regardless of interests. But the result is not optimistic. The Ming Party has been accustomed to a peaceful life for too long. The more you have, the more timid you become. The girl next to her frowned. I think the biggest trouble is that we can't tell who is the secret party among the bright parties. The poisonous snakes hiding in the dark are the most terrifying. That's right. Stay vigilant, Vare sighed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 636. Granda. In the small woods behind the small building, Galen stood alone in the middle of the forest, paying close attention to the swaying leaves and grass around him. The wind blew from the ground and across the forest, driving the leaves to sway continuously. He stood entirely surrounded by green and shadows, his eyes wandering slightly from time to time, looking at other inconspicuous places around him. The void bugs are just the vanguard. They have already targeted you. Now you have to learn to deal with this creature on your own. Hesaz's voice rang in his ears. What do I need to pay attention to? How can they be eliminated? Garen asked in a low voice. They are just bugs, very weak. It's just that ordinary physical attacks have no effect on them. They must be covered with spirit. Vigor is the element of the Mother River and their nemesis. You only need to concentrate your vigor to a high degree and then attack them to solve the problem. But the trouble now is that you can't control yourself at all when dreaming. Your consciousness rebounds too much, causing you to act completely according to instinct. So first of all, you have to do one thing and improve your concentration in the dream. Otherwise, you will be too easily influenced by your instincts and unable to focus your thoughts, and it will be difficult to even control your own actions, let alone operate your spirit. Hesaz said carefully. Garen repeated, the first step is to train your attention while dreaming. Right. Just try it. What if ordinary people don't have courage? What should they do if they encounter void creatures? Garen suddenly asked. Find and identify them, or try to communicate with them to get some knowledge of the void, or actively avoid them and exit the dreamland. Their time is different from ours. Generally, void creatures live on a very long time level. Their one breath may be our years. So don't compete with them for being patient, that's what they're best at, and some of them can even survive for tens of thousands of years. Hesaz whispered. Void creatures are usually not interested in ordinary people. If they are, there are only two possibilities. One is to try to pollute human beings. Their main food is a certain kind of energy continuously produced by biological consciousness. The polluted biological consciousness will become their own kind and producer. The other is curiosity, pure curiosity, just like when researchers among us humans discovered a certain type of ant that never grew tentacles. Garen nodded, indicating that he understood what Hesaz meant. Although he talked too much, making his explanation very redundant and lengthy, he understood the main meaning. Looking at the swaying trees and weeds around, there is also the faint sound of cars and the sound of store promotions in the distance. Garen slowly calmed down, controlled his consciousness, and began to fall into a hazy sleep. His consciousness gradually blurred, and he unknowingly sat down at the foot of a big tree, with his back against the rough bark surface, and sat on the soft but moist grass. Warm moisture rushed up between the grass, with a faint grassy smell. Unknowingly, Garen closed his eyes and slowly fell into sleep. Chirp chirp. It seemed like there was a bird chirping from far away. Garen opened his eyes in confusion and found that he seemed to be lying on a big bed at home. There was an electric fan next to him blowing hard on him. The shape of the fan could not be seen clearly. It seemed to be white and made of noodles. It's done. The wind blowing out is hot and humid. The surrounding walls seemed to be constantly flowing, changing subtle colors, which seemed to be brown. Garen felt very unconscious and couldn't tell what he was doing. He lowered his head to see what posture he was in, but he couldn't. Come down. Put the knife back in the box. This idea suddenly came to him, and then he flew out of bed lightly. Then he found that there was a black knife behind him in his room. The knife was very long and wide, with something on it. Silver blade. He felt himself walking over and taking the knife off the shelf that appeared out of nowhere. Then he took a box with his other hand and inserted the knife directly into it. Garen suddenly remembered that he seemed to have something to do. He stood there and thought hard, but he couldn't think of it. He kept standing like this, thinking about it. Suddenly I felt a small itching sensation on my right foot, as if there were some insects crawling. He tried hard to bend down to grab it, but he couldn't find his right foot when he lowered his head. Snapped. A drop of dew fell on Garen's forehead. The dew slid down the bridge of his nose and flowed from his chin into his collar. Garen opened his eyes and felt a sense of relief all over his body. "You're awake?" Hesaz's voice sounded regularly. "It seems I didn't succeed," Garen frowned. "Obviously you failed." There was gloating in Hesaz's tone. "You fell into a dream without even realizing it, and then you were led by instinct, and finally came out without being able to do anything." "It feels a little troublesome," Garen frowned and said. "That's for sure. Anyone who does this exercise can only get it through long-term practice. You will get better after practicing slowly in the future." Garen stood up and felt something really crawling on his right foot. He shook his trouser legs, and a small white ant fell out of his trousers. The ant rolled over and got up from the ground, and soon disappeared into the grass. "This is a brand new field," Garen whispered, "but I will have a lot of time to learn slowly." "Somebody is coming." Hesesai's voice dropped quickly. Garen turned his head and looked to the left. From his angle, he could see a tall girl walking on the lawn between the two houses. Dressed in white casual clothes, with long red hair shawl, holding a small red handbag in his hand, he has an oval face, fair skin, and exudes a cool temperament. "Ishiro, long time no see," Garen greeted with a smile. "Garen, are you here for morning practice today?" Ishiro also saw Garen, and his face was slightly startled. "I was delayed by something yesterday, so I didn't come to see you." "It's okay." "Are you here for some exercise at noon?" Garen asked. "Yeah. I'm used to this time," Ishiro nodded. "Speaking of it, it's been a year since we started sparring together here, right?" Garen took a few steps forward and stood a few steps away from Ishiro. Suddenly, his nose twitched slightly, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. "Would you like to try a few tricks?" Ishairo's eyes suddenly lit up. "Call." She didn't receive a greeting, and a side kick swept over her, making a sharp and crisp sound in the air. Snapped. Garen deflected her kick, but a second kick came from the right. "Keep swinging away." The third mark, the fourth mark, the fifth mark. The two of them continuously collided with their hands and feet, making a banging sound. Ishiro's speed is getting faster and faster, his legs are almost connected into a phantom, his whole body is like a top, and his toes are like the tips of knives, like a continuous razor, constantly cutting across Garen's right hand. "Be careful." Ishiro made a small jump back, bent his right leg, and suddenly kicked forward. His right leg actually kicked forward like a cannonball. Bang! The two of them suddenly separated, and Garen slowly lowered his right hand, with a charming smile on his face. "You've made progress again. I still can't force you to use your second hand." Ishiro shook his head with a slight sweat on his forehead. "Do you still remember the move I once demonstrated to you?" Garen suddenly lowered his voice. The 5 fingers of his right hand were spread out, as if he was holding something. At this moment, a strange scene appeared. There seemed to be a faint flow of air flowing in the middle of his palm. Air currents as thin as hair were constantly flowing between his fingers. These invisible air currents seemed to be alive, constantly surrounding his palms. In an instant, Ishiro's eyes were dazzled. He didn't hear any sound, he just felt his eyes dazzled. Garen's right hand was already printed on his forehead, and his thumb was raised, facing his left eye. It's just a hair's breadth away from going straight into the eye socket. Only then did Ishiro feel a deep chill. The crisis premonition ability that she was always proud of did not respond at this time. Silent killing technique. Garen retracted his arm and held it lightly with his right palm, as if holding the invisible wind. "You have an extraordinary sensitivity to wind and airflow. You may be able to truly master the essence of this technique." He is right, this is indeed just a skill, not a secret martial art, nor a secret technique, but a simple little skill, a skill that can dissolve the surge of air generated when moving. Theoretically, only martial artists who have truly achieved vibration skills in secret martial arts can achieve this, but Garen has long discovered the specialness of Ishiro. She has an extremely delicate perception of the upcoming changes in the subtle flow of air, and may have it is possible to develop this technique of sensing changes in airflow. Silent killing technique, Ishiro repeated the name. There seemed to be dazzling lights in her eyes, and her hands unconsciously began to repeat Garen's movements just now. Although the postures were exactly the same, there was no abnormal change at all. Don't be fooled by the name. I am a good law-abiding citizen, Garen smiled, then I will go back first. You can practice slowly. Okay, Ishiro nodded, but his hands kept repeating the simple change movements as if possessed. She felt like she could learn. Garen smiled, looked at her fascinated, turned, and walked towards the back door of his home. Regardless of selfishness, he still admires talented students like Ishiro. She is the kind of person who knows how precious these skills are. She has almost died countless times with these seemingly simple skills. Only those who have experienced it will understand its value. To such a person, it is not too much to impart some small things. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 637. You think highly of her, Hesaz spoke again. Do you like her? No, compared to those two seeds, I just admire her at most. Garen shook his head. Those two seeds, Hesaz didn't understand. He didn't know everything Garen had done in school before. Garen smiled and didn't answer much. Ishiro's skills are beyond the scope of ordinary people, even reaching the level of Bald and the others. Such a result is just self-taught. What if I give her a little pointer in the direction? You're really boring, Hesaz said. There are too many geniuses in the world, I think you are too bored. Perhaps Garen did not tell Hesaz that he could sense the differences between sisters Alicia and Asero. He had no intention of explaining, but just laid a little foreshadowing casually. Maybe it will come in handy later. We should go back. Horseman. Crazy roar. The strong black man swung his dagger and rushed towards the bespectacled Haseman. His movements were like the wind, and his speed was so fast that he actually created a faint shadow. In an open space near a garbage dump, Haseman quietly leaned against the black car, wearing a black windbreaker and looking coldly at the black man who rushed towards him. Bang! A side kick swept hard from the right side of Horseman and hit the black man's waist accurately, knocking him to the ground. It was a tall, bald, muscular man, with shiny white muscles that looked like metal, glowing with a hard and terrifying color. He bumped his fists and walked out with a grin. Pick up the black man on the ground. How stupid! You dare to resist the powerful Lord Hoseman, the white bald man chuckled. He grabbed the black man's neck with his right hand and squeezed it, like squeezing a chicken. With a click, the neck bones of the black man's neck were directly crushed, and the look in his eyes quickly dimmed. Haseman lowered his head, lit a cigarette, and took a puff. Is there anything you haven't finished yet? No more, this is the last one. The white man's bald head bowed his head and replied respectfully. He was a murderer selected by his family, but he never obeyed any personal command from the family. At this time, he bowed to the man in front of him like a sheep. My lord's plan should be implemented smoothly. There will always be disobedient things jumping out, Haseman said calmly. A lot of people have been attacked in the area recently. You can take people to patrol and deal with those who are in trouble. The situation seems to be a bit chaotic recently. Yes. Haseman turned around, opened the car door, and sat sideways. Looking out the window at the slowly moving city scenery in the distance, Haseman closed his eyes slightly. Let's investigate the information about the weirdos who attacked us last night. The driver in front nodded silently and made no sound. Haseman was slightly lost in thought. He could feel that his secret martial arts had gradually reached an indescribable level. The feeling of constantly strengthening and evolving himself was so intoxicating. Just last night, when he was inspecting his subordinate branches, he was attacked by someone. They were guys who were very skilled in using firearms. A few capable subordinates couldn't resist it. Hoseman personally shot and killed several people on the spot to stabilize the situation, but the origins of these people are unknown. Looking at the slowly accelerating scenery outside the car window, he gradually fell into deep thought. If this kind of garbage comes in again, kill it immediately. Dam stepped on the face of the person lying on the ground with his feet, his face full of disgust. He was dressed in bright red unisex clothing, with two large black characters embroidered on his shoulders, which happened to be the compound word for damn, half on one side. The dozen or so tall and strong men surrounding him all lowered their heads and responded with a hint of fear on their faces. Drag him out. Dam put his foot hard on the head of the person under his feet, and kicked him until he heard a crunch. He didn't know whether he was alive or dead. A strong man quickly dragged the person on the ground away. The rest of the people gathered around Dam and walked to the main seat of the conference room and sat down. Dam's face became more and more feminine, and his whole person seemed to be exuding a feminine temperament all the time, but there was no feminine softness at all, but the sharp angles. Although his temperament is becoming more and more neutral, the masculine edges of his face are still the same. Unexpectedly, he also put on bright red lipstick, light purple eyeshadow, and a thin layer of foundation on his face. Her ears were also pierced and she wore two shining diamond stud earrings. Recently, people have been randomly breaking into our headquarters. They are really desperate. The government has sent enough people to assist us in our operations, but I refused directly. It just so happened that I lack some experimental materials, and my phaseless water bird fist has not been completely perfected. I just need some live bodies to try it myself. His voice deliberately sounded like a falsetto that didn't sound like a male voice. It was sharp and harsh, making people's hair stand on end. Marshal Dam, those who broke in were very fast. We heard the news from some channels. It is rumored that they are probably members of the McCall group, and they have huge power behind them. Huge, Dam chuckled. He already knew the identities of the intruders. He had just received the news from his family that the McCall group was now ambitious and wanted to expand aggressively. They belonged to a gray company, half black and half a century old. There are still people who desperately want to fight against us. Dam stuck out his tongue and licked his fingers. The McCall group hired some mercenaries, thinking that Black Hands can win by breaking the rules. How ridiculous. But these are just minor troubles, mainly from Hoseman's side. Dam looked at the strong woman sitting at the table at the back. Hoseman's side is also being attacked now, but I don't know who the opponent is, the woman answered quickly. Dam touched his chin, as if looking for an unshaven beard. The subordinates around him looked at him fearfully, fearing that something might suddenly happen to him. Dam is famous for being moody, and he may take it out on others if he disobeys or does not go his way. Moreover, he will often just pat you lightly with his hand. After you return, you may urinate blood and suffer kidney failure the next day. Lying in the hospital forever. Rumor has it that both he and Horseman are members of an organization called the Fighting Club. Both of them have become leaders of the younger generation of their respective families, occupying most of the family's industry, and some of their disobedient subordinates have also been replaced by them. People. Where's that cute little apple? Dam suddenly asked. She has safely left the United States and has been delivered to Asia by our people. We don't know the specific location, a subordinate quickly answered. I really want to see what Hoseman's expression will be when he knows this. A smile appeared at the corner of Dam's mouth. He didn't notice at all that his skin was getting whiter and more transparent. The transformation into white jade, the fourth level of illusion, and the seeds taking root and sprouting in his body have made his whole body's energy and spirit unconsciously merge into one, reaching an unprecedentedly powerful level. Marshal. Another challenge, A subordinate's shout could be heard faintly outside the door. "It's Redman, the underground boxing champion with the gold belt from Eastern Europe." Dam stood up. "It seems that there is another experimental subject who is willing to die for the bounty." He licked his lips and quickly walked out of the conference room under everyone's standing gaze. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, it has been more than half a year since Garin returned to school. He doesn't go to the fighting club very much anymore. He spends more time disappearing and disappearing. He no longer lives in a dormitory, but rents a house by himself. Apart from his normal daily classes, he gradually kept a low profile and concentrated on dreaming practice. The first step was to train himself to understand that he was dreaming. This step took him several months. Perhaps his talent in this area is indeed not very good. This progress really disappointed him. And from his intelligence network on the Nighthawk mercenary group in the mercenary world, rumors of a mysterious organization called the Fighting Society have begun to spread in the current mercenary world. It is rumored that all the members of the fighting club are elite masters. After Sidon of the fighting club completely disappeared due to manslaughter not long ago, the rumors about the fighting club became more widespread. When Sidon was shot by someone, he directly killed 6 people in a row and disappeared without a trace in the end. Killing 6 opponents in a row when all the opponents had guns undoubtedly caused a ripple in the mercenary community in the entire fighting world. In addition, there is no need to mention Damu and Hosman from the fighting club. Both of them are extremely ferocious and powerful, terrifying characters. Their skills cannot even be affected by firearms, and they have simply reached the point of inhumanity. As the two became more and more famous and powerful, there were more and more rumors about the inheritance of the mysterious and powerful fighting club. The school's fighting club has gradually become an empty shell after several people have left or stopped going, but despite this, many people still come here. Garin did not expect this to happen. The reason why Damozeman is so powerful and progresses so fast is actually due to him. The power they use is largely based on his soul seed. The conflict between the Blood Clan did not involve the state at this time, or in other words, there seemed to be no movement in many states in this direction, as if the civil war among the Blood Clan was simply a matter in another world. Garin ignored these slowly changing things, and concentrated all his energy on practicing the technique of detecting dreams. The success rate is not very high, only about 3 out of 10 times are successful. You need to constantly emphasize before going to bed to hint that you are about to fall asleep and dream, but this hint does not seem to be very effective. Hessas proposed to use some medicine to assist, but Galen rejected it. Hessas proposed another method, which is to concentrate on looking at your hands. Before going to bed, carefully remember the details of your hands. When you fall asleep, you only have one thought, and that is to look at your hands. This method seemed to be more effective. After trying it many times, Galen slowly felt that his success rate was improving. But sometimes his attention would be distracted by inexplicable associations and strange scenes in his dreams, and then he would drift off to an unknown place. Unfortunately, he cannot enter the dreamland anytime and anywhere. He can only enter when he wants to rest, otherwise his body's biological clock will be disrupted. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 638. Since time cannot be adjusted freely, most of the time is wasted waiting to consume physical energy and energy. Garin also stopped practicing the killing hand because of some fears. He has always been wary of Hessas, even though he act completely harmless. But he couldn't forget the first time Hessas wanted to seize the body. If his soul seed hadn't been there and used the power of the Northern Halberdiers' cold flame true water evil art to contain the opponent's remaining soul, the result might have been unexpected. It's useless. The killing hand is a secret martial art that is very powerful against void creatures. You have already practiced it to this point. Don't you think it's a pity to switch again? Hessas saw Garin's plan. I never feel pity for something that may have hidden dangers. Because giving it up is not my loss, but my luck, Garin replied calmly. He was sitting cross-legged in a spacious wooden floor hall, which was adapted as a large dance studio for him to sit quietly. He spent 600 gallons per month, which is equivalent to the price of $600 on Earth, but compared to the quiet environment and large enough area, the price was nothing to him. Worry about this, worry about that, hey, the void creatures won't give you time to worry. Each one of them is smarter than the last, and there are more and more coming. If your progress can't keep up with the opening of the void cracks, then you can only waiting to die. Hessas smiled proudly. Garen didn't bother to pay attention to him. Close your eyes and continue to observe the situation inside your body. During this period of time, he spent a lot of energy observing the state of his killing hand magic skill. Although he did not find any harmful aspects of it, some subtle signs of uncontrollability were highlighted one by one. This made him decisively stop the progress of practicing the killing hand. Instead, he began to think about his future path. He was born in the Bayun sect and practiced the secret martial arts of giant elephants. Later, he practiced the golden statue technique and reached an incredible level. In the legend, he cultivated the realm of the gods that could only be achieved in theory. He was a master of secret martial arts and had no rivals. In the end, even if Xianflan resisted with all his strength, he was confident that at best both sides would suffer losses. In terms of secret martial arts, although he has the innate ability to shorten his growth time, there are still many things that he needs to understand and understand by himself, and he still cannot get around it. When faced with the decision of death, the ability cannot give any help and he can only rely on self-determination. These things are not virtual, but the real growth of oneself. Galen looked at his own growth and experiences step by step. In the totem world, he worked step by step. The more he saw the vastness and mystery of the universe, the more he was filled with awe of it. The terrifying civilizations like warlocks between heaven and earth have disappeared, and only the universe remains eternal and unchanged. His original arrogance and pride slowly subsided and turned into a kind of exploration and knowledge about everything. In the end, while achieving the 6 supreme forms in the totem world, he also lost everything he was familiar with due to the power of time. Once again, he understood the power of time and the power of the universe, which is powerful enough to change everything. When he arrived in this world, he felt the true tranquility and peace. There was not much intrigue here, and there was no cruel existence. He grew up peacefully from childhood to adulthood. Even if there were blood witches, they were hidden behind the scenes and did not interfere much in human life. The area affected seems to be wide, but in fact it is only a small area if calculated carefully. More than 90% of the remaining places are living and working in peace and contentment. Most people have no troubles and live their lives honestly, day after day, year after year. Putting aside a little bit of extraordinary power, this world is actually an ordinary enlarged version of the Earth. If you don't take the initiative to touch that area of extraordinary power, in most other areas, you can live a peaceful life as an ordinary person wherever you go. But that's not what he wants. What do I want? Garen asked himself. I just want to witness everything in this world and this universe, from bottom to top, from humble to great. What is it all like? He answered to himself. I don't want to come to this world without any explanation and die like this without any explanation. There was unwillingness in his heart, and he savored this unwillingness carefully. It seemed to be the most fundamental motivation for him to keep moving forward. Hessas was still nagging in his ears, not knowing what he was talking about. Garen seemed to be unable to hear anything. He was just quietly absorbed in it, blocking out all sounds, leaving only the pounding beating of his own heart. That deep reluctance, like volcanic lava about to erupt, was sticky and hot, accumulating in his chest. Following this most fundamental motivation, he kept recalling the hundreds of secret martial arts and various kinds of knowledge he had memorized, as if he were just looking at the flowers. In addition to the killing hand, His self-created and perfected secret martial arts also include the Northern Halbi or Hanyan Zhen Shui Xiegong, which is derived from the continuous evolution of the Blackwater Zhenkong and is a top-notch biological weapon formed by merging the seeds of two biological secret martial arts. Secret martial arts, as well as the God statue skill which he has reached the peak through self-deduction. These two skills are the secret martial arts that he is best at now. Since the killing hand belongs to the feminine, then I can also practice a masculine secret martial arts as a technique to slightly offset the balance. Garen thought in his mind and began to search for masculine secret martial arts in his mind. The secret weapons that can catch his eye are at least those with extraordinary origins, or those with extremely high levels and high potential. But among them, there are very few who can reach the level of divine statue skill. If you go up to the next level and reach the level of Northern Halbi or Hanyan Zhen Shui Xiegong, then it will be even less. Or maybe only the killing hand can reach this level. This leaves less room for choice. Extreme Heat Palm, after practicing it, does not belong to the type with special effects. It should not be a restricted type in this world. It is just that the level is not high, and it is only on the same level as the God statue skill. Garen hesitated slightly, but then he just regarded it as killing time. In fact, the extremely hot palm itself has no special effects. It is just a general intermediate martial arts. Because the practice is very slow, the strength obtained after a long time is not strong. According to the classification, it is classified as a health-preserving skill, but its advantage is that it can warm and nourish the body. It can just neutralize the cold nature brought by the killing hand and soul seed. However, the level of extreme heat palm itself is not very high. This is limited by the low level of its founder. Its highest level is to live 100 years, with continuous vitality in its shots and a very strong return. This is its greatest. As for the improvement of the average physical quality, it is similar to the golden image skill before the divine image skill. Some supporting footwork and palm techniques are also not to Garen's liking. All he needs is the warming effect of that extremely hot palm. It just so happens that the cultural relics are arriving soon, and there may be a lot of potential points to be gained. Garen took out his phone and turned it on, then checked the text message on the bald head's side. The cultural relics have arrived and are now delivered to a house he rented in the suburbs. It's just that because it was divided and robbed midway, there isn't much left. Please rest assured, if you dare to provoke our Nighthawk forces, I will deal with them personally. Bald Katon has become much more violent since he returned from Africa. After replying a text message to the bald man, Galen directly dialed the number of another go-getter, Jay. Jay, where are you now? We are almost arriving in Vaya. Boss Jay is the person in charge of the affairs of the men in black. Someone blocked this matter. We are sorry. This is none of your business. It's up to you two to decide these matters. Did you succeed in the investigation I asked you to do? Garen interrupted. Just snatch the cultural relics and so on. Anyway, it is estimated that only the man in black knows the secret. I understand clearly. The daughter of the former director Lieber, Oline, is only 12 years old now. She is a beautiful mixed-race little girl who attends Madden's Land Private School in Yorkshire, England. She is now taken care of by her mother, Bethna. Father Reb Count is a well-known international trader. Where's the person? Since you promised lay-by, you must take good care of her, Garen asked. Originally, the Men in Black organization had a dedicated person responsible for protecting Ou Lin. After the organization collapsed, I continued to maintain the original instructions. The protector is still there, and there have been no major changes, Jay Hui reported. Take her over. Her father's identity and grievances mean that she will not be able to live a stable life. We can't protect her all the time. By the way, who is Lieber's main opponent? They may attack his daughter and wife. The British Earth Dragon and his small group were severely damaged by Lieber, as well as the German Heavy Armored Corps, which is a killer organization. In addition, the Nagas in India also had a grudge against Lieber. Jay started talking non-stop as soon as he started talking. Garin finally understood why Lieber had to sacrifice his biggest secret in exchange for his daughter's safety even if he died. Just look at the forces and masters who hate him to the core. There are 7 or 8 well-known name groups at the time of the hookup, and there are still some who are secretly unaware. Just pay attention to handling it. Don't let me break my promise. If you encounter something that you can't handle, report it to me directly. Clear. The phone is disconnected. Garin put away his phone. You like all kinds of cultural relics, Hessaz is here again. Garin is too lazy to pay attention to him. He is the type who gets more and more excited the more you pay attention to him. If you keep ignoring him, he will become quiet. Moreover, cultural relics are his biggest secret, so naturally they cannot be leaked casually. Do you really think you're safe now? Can you ignore the threat from void creatures? Hessaz continued. Actually, there is another piece of sad news that I haven't told you. Garin stood up. What news? Hey. I discovered it after killing the void bug last time. I was afraid of scaring you, so I didn't tell you in advance. Hessaz whetted his appetite. Garin remained silent, waiting for him to speak. Under normal circumstances, he would probably not be able to help himself. Sure enough, after a minute, it couldn't bear it anymore. I discovered that the bug was not free, it belonged to a group, a race. You mean, killing that bug will cause more trouble? Garin asked. He walked out of the room without any hesitation, closed the door with his backhand, and slowly moved forward through the corridor where people came and went from time to time. That is a race of devourers. They have a strict hierarchy, just like bees and ants, forming a coordinated whole. If you mess with one of them, you mess with the whole group. Hessaz gloated and said, I think you will be in trouble soon. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 639. Garin was speechless. Do you think your soul seeds and magical skills can resist them? Don't be naive. Hessaz laughed sarcastically. Only techniques for dream hallucinations can truly resist them, and you are still far behind. Without my protection, you are just a delicious cake. Then why do you want to protect me? I didn't ask you. Garin walked out of the corridor calmly, exited the door of the rental building, and began to go down the stone steps. Hessaz was obviously stunned. You think I do? If I weren't tied to you now, even if you die, I'll be finished. Do you think I want to protect you? Then you actually want to give up practicing the killing hand, give up on ways to increase my strength. This is a secret weapon that both of us can use to enhance ourselves at the same time. You actually want to give up? Hessaz is very angry. Do you know how much trouble there'll be later? Do you know how much I paid to get rid of that little bug? You have nothing. Suddenly his voice stopped abruptly. Garin's forward steps stopped instantly. He raised his right foot and it was still hanging in the air, but he never put it down. His consciousness seemed to blur all of a sudden, and everything around him seemed to be quickly moving away. The sound of cars, the voices of people coming and going, the clear calls of birds, the warm sunshine, everything seemed to be quickly moving away from him, and he fell into that place again. He was so confused that he couldn't control his dream state. He was originally standing on the street in front of the building, surrounded by street lights and pedestrians, young people riding bicycles, old green trucks hauling goods, fruit stalls, buses passing slowly, and watering plants. The master gardener, the office worker carrying his bag and rushing to look at his watch. But now everything seems to be blurred, details cannot be seen clearly, and sounds cannot be heard. Garin felt as if he had suddenly entered a silent and fuzzy world. No one could see their faces clearly. It seemed like they were just a blur. The ground seemed to be shaking and shaking. Bang! Suddenly, a strong force hit his chest hard. Garen only felt numbness in his chest and no pain, but he could hear the sound of his sternum breaking. Very crisp, click. He instinctively wanted to wave his arms in confusion, but his body could not move at all. There seemed to be someone shouting and calling his name in his ears, but he couldn't hear it clearly and it was intermittently. Bang! Another strong force hit his left arm, which broke instantly and became twisted at an unnatural angle. Strangely enough, Garen didn't feel anything at all. But he could hear that the voice in his ear seemed to be getting more and more anxious. It seemed to be shouting or roaring something. Bang! Another huge force hit his shoulder hard, and Garen was half kneeling on the ground. He finally saw clearly what was attacking him. Just a few meters in front of him stood a group of unknown monsters. It was like a doll made from a ball of white mud, more than 3 meters tall, with only limbs and no facial features, and doll heads, hands and feet protruding from everywhere on its body. He walked slowly and slowly, as if his movements were slow. It raised its hand, and the arm had no palm or fingers, just a round ball like the end of a rolling pin. Then it hit Garen hard, aiming directly at his head. Garen raised his head and looked quietly at the white arm that was smashed down. His face was quickly covered by the shadow of the arm, without any trace of fear or panic. The moment his arm was about to hit him. "Wake up!" Suddenly a loud voice boomed in Garen's ears. The voice roared, with heavy vibrations and loud noises. Garen opened his eyes suddenly, and he actually stood there and closed his eyes and fell asleep. He was still standing in the same place, at the entrance and exit of the building, on the street, and there was a constant flow of people and vehicles passing by. No one noticed that he stood here blankly with his eyes closed. Maybe more people just thought he was too tired. "Close your eyes and regain your energy. You were almost finished." Hessa's tired voice sounded in his ears. Who was that just now? Garen was a little confused. He felt that his brain had not fully recovered and was still a little confused. He subconsciously reached out and touched his right ear hole. There was wet and sticky liquid there. I took out my finger and saw that it was blood. The bright red blood looked extremely conspicuous in the sunlight. Click. Suddenly, Garen felt a crisp sound in his shoulder, as if the bones were broken instantly, and then his left arm, with a snap, was directly fractured. Finally, there was the chest. Amidst the continuous clicking sounds, he felt that he had difficulty breathing in his chest, and his sternum broke and collapsed inward in an instant. Taking a deep breath, Garen's forehead was so painful that fine cold sweat broke out. The muscles all over his body slowly twisted and vibrated, and his extremely precise muscle and bone control skills were used in an instant. Crackle, crackle, crackle. In an instant, there was a large squeaking sound of fine joints on his body, and his muscles were vibrating like waves, forming various different strengths layer by layer. It was like the most exquisite and sensitive hands, instantly restoring all the broken bones in his body to their original state. Position, and then surrounded by strong muscle strands to fix the position of the bone. This is the most advanced self-control technique and can only be used in cases of extreme physical damage. Garen stood there, trembling all over, and the injuries on his body were temporarily stabilized. The internal bleeding was quickly stopped, and the powerful blood coagulation ability began to coagulate the wound and block the bleeding port. The Devourers are here. This time they are officially regular soldiers, ordinary soldiers among the Devourers, white dolls. Hessas explained tiredly. If it were any later, you might die inside. Garen remained silent. Do you know why in your dream and hallucination, your physical quality and other things are just like ordinary people and break at a touch? Hessas explained in a low voice. It's not that you are too weak, but that they are too strong. The average strength of the white dolls, the weakest one, can exceed 10 tons. They are pure destroyers in dreams, and they are also pure destroyers fortunately, The void creatures have not fully recovered yet. If before, there would have been at least 10 white dolls dispatched at once. They would completely destroy your dream, then forcefully drag you into their illusion, and then treat you like a pig. Keep them alive, waiting to be eaten by them. Garen took a deep breath. This was the first time he had been so seriously injured since he came to this world. The left arm was broken, the sternum was broken, the shoulder was shattered, and there was internal bleeding, and all of this happened in an instant. I used my power to drag you out of the dream just now. If you can't adapt to the activities in the dream as soon as possible, you will die at the hands of void creatures sooner or later. Hessa seemed unusually tired. Fortunately, void creatures have a different concept of time than us. It takes a certain amount of time for them to adjust and jump from another time level. 10 minutes in their view may be 10 days or even a month for us. So you still have time to learn to adapt as quickly as possible. Garen once again felt a familiar feeling, a familiar sense of crisis. Although it was very weak, it was indeed something he had not encountered in a long time. Don't think that you will be reincarnated after being killed by a void creature. Hessa's sudden words broke Garen's innermost reliance. I don't know how your body has the kind of time and space attributes that can travel through time and space and enter other dimensions after normal death. I have seen some of these systems before. Some of them have the ability to reincarnate without fear. Death, but do you know what their consequences are? He sneered softly. In the end, their souls were connected to the void creatures, and they were eaten until not even the dregs were left. This kind of reincarnated body is the delicacy most loved by void creatures. Warlocks are extremely powerful, and several of the worlds they rule also span dimensions. Such technology is nothing new, but they are still defeated by void creatures. I advise you not to take any chances. With a somewhat stiff posture, Garen got into his new car, slowly started the car, and drove towards the house in the suburbs. He still has absolute confidence in himself. If he can train himself to be the same in dreams as in reality, then he will have absolute confidence to face any opponent. Hessas just kept sneering from the side. The sky is covered with red fire clouds like stairs, layer by layer, from near to far, gradually getting darker and darker, from golden yellow to dark gold. On the edge of Glendo, in front of a red-roofed house on the edge of a T intersection, Alicia and Ishiro opened the door and got out of a white car. They were both wearing white skirts with silver buttons on them, forming rows of decorative dots. Walking to the house with the red roof and gray walls, Ishiro looked up at the overall structure of the house through the fence. The left half has a pitched roof, and the right half has an ordinary flat roof. There are some scattered vermilion windows on the front of the house, and there is a pointed cylindrical protrusion on the far right corner, like a miniature version of the castle's auxiliary castle. This is the place, Preto said, and someone will come to take care of him, Ishiro said in a low voice. Alicia, wait for me outside. Get in the car first and close the door. Pay attention to your surroundings. If you find anything, just press the intercom and let me know. Okay, Alicia nodded seriously, knowing the seriousness of the situation. Preto diverted the pursuers who were chasing him and asked his sister to come over and find the people who came to rescue him. Although this matter seemed simple, no matter what the situation, one could not relax his vigilance. This was the life of the two sisters for so many years. Here are the key rules. Many times what seems to be a safe situation may be the most dangerous moment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 640. You have no idea how scary the white doll is. Hessa said with a sneer. Garen ignored him completely. He was driving the car on his own. He had only gotten his driver's license not long ago, but he was already very skilled in his movements. A car passed by in front of me, and from time to time a car behind me would catch up. The flower beds on both sides of the road kept passing by quickly. Although the white dolls are just the most common soldiers among the void creatures, they have strong bodies, tireless and painful bodies, super recovery, and powerful strength. Moreover, I guarantee that you will not want to meet the same person at the same time. The two white dolls, because they will affect each other and enhance each other's strength. This is the perverted war machine. They have no acupuncture points or meridians. They are war weapons specially developed for us warlocks. Hessas said with a half sneer and half explanation. Is there any way that I can move quickly in my dream temporarily? Garen suddenly asked, but his hands were still moving on the steering wheel, constantly adjusting the direction of the car. Why do you ask? Training yourself is the way to go, Hessas said puzzledly. If we encounter the same situation again, I can't move. If I die, won't you die together? Garen asked. It's just an emergency. Yes, there is, but it will cost me a lot, Hessas said dissatisfied. It's good to have it. Garen's expression remained unchanged. I feel like the one just now was just a test. The real one will come soon. You'd better be ready. The time of void creatures is not the same as ours. Even if they want to launch a second attack, the interval will not be so fast. I know void creatures better than you. Boom. With a roar, the car suddenly turned around, stepped on the brakes sideways, and drew a distance forward, leaving 4 black scratches on the ground before stopping its inertia. Parked sideways on the road. For a moment, Garen felt that his brain was going sluggish, and his consciousness quickly faded away, becoming exactly the same as before. Hessas's voice could no longer be heard clearly, and it felt as if it was separated by a thick layer of hazy cloth. The sound of burning fire came from all around. Garen looked through the car window and saw raging fires burning on both sides of the street outside. The flames shot up into the sky. Not only the sides of the street, but even the pavement was burning in pieces. The scarlet flames were like red ribbons, blowing upwards. The surroundings suddenly became blurry and unclear, and the details on the surface were not very clear. The sky turned dark at some point, just like night. Bang! The rear of the car seemed to be hit hard by something, the whole car creaked, and the rear half of the car was flattened as if a can was crushed. Garen hurriedly opened the door and ran out of the car. When he turned around, 3 white dolls more than 4 meters high appeared again. They waved their huge fists and moved towards him. One of the white dolls was moving towards him on the right side. Lift your feet from the trunk of the car. Garen felt that his body was unusually sluggish, and his feet seemed to be out of control. He desperately tried to escape back, but his legs remained in place no matter how much he ran, without moving at all. Run. This is the fantasy of the white doll. Hessas's voice came in all of a sudden. Garen seemed to gain strength all of a sudden. His body suddenly returned to normal and he was completely able to control it. The surrounding environment suddenly became much clearer. He knew that Hessas had done it. Turn around and run away. Damn it! 3 white dolls, now you're in trouble. You must escape from their illusion as soon as possible, and I will tell you how to escape. Bang! Galen stepped onto a stopped car and stepped directly on the window glass above. He bowed his body, bent his knees, and curled up like a spring. He didn't wait for Hessas to finish speaking. Boom! There was a violent explosion, and Garen bounced back from the car window, flying toward the 3 white dolls behind him like an arrow from a string. You wanna die? Hessas shouted angrily. Roar! Suddenly, a huge blood-red creature appeared in Garen's expressionless eyes, and a violent and terrifying roar erupted from his body as it rubbed against the air. That's a dragon roar. The soul will of the 9-headed dragon has always been lurking deep in Garen's soul, becoming one with him. It is the last surviving overlord's will in the last world, and it is the absolute desire for survival. As the dominant creature at the top of the food chain, the 9-headed dragon has been suppressed in this world for too long, and now it's finally time to explode. The huge 9-headed dragon phantom emerged behind Garen. The terrifying phantom was more than 10 meters tall, Its body was blood red, and it was surrounded by countless black smoke-like auras. Garen stretched out his right hand and grabbed a white doll. The hand seemed to be wrapped in a huge 9-headed dragon head. With a terrifying roar, he rushed towards the 4-meter-high white doll. The white doll also let out a silent roar. It waved its fist and smashed towards the unknown force in front of it. Although its body shape is very different from that of the 9-headed dragon's shadow. The 9-headed dragon's shadow is more than twice as big as it. The two are like an adult versus a child, colliding together in an instant. Boom! Like thunder in the sky, the huge fist of the white doll was severely broken and punched back into the body, completely stuffed back into the body like plasticine. A flash of flush flashed across Garen's face, and his right arm shriveled up in an instant, as if all the moisture had been lost all at once, leaving only skin and bones. He quickly switched to his left arm, raised his hand, and waved towards the other white puppet. He was extremely fast, and his left fist accurately struck the head and face of the white doll with the roar of a 9-headed dragon. With a bang, his head was blown open, and countless white mud-like things sputtered out. The white doll staggered back a few steps and fell to the ground. The last doll retreated continuously, with a frightened expression on its face. Its body was covered by the huge shadow of the 9-headed dragon, and it seemed to be trembling. Seeing that its two companions were severely injured in an instant, it didn't dare to stay any longer, turned around and stumbled away towards the distance. Garen stood there with an expressionless face. He could feel that everything around him was changing, and everything that had become clear began to blur again. "You madman, if you want to die, don't drag me along," the huge roar of Hessa suddenly sounded. "You actually fused with the soul of 9-headed dragon. The will of that kind of creature is so easy to integrate, that is one of the top 100 descendants of void creatures. How dare you actually fuse its will and soul? You're lucky if you didn't get eaten by it." "My power is exhausted," Garen whispered. "You only have 2 seconds, it actually scared away 3 white dolls. This is the biggest joke I've ever seen." Hessa seemed to be angry after being frightened. "If they stay and fight back again, you will die as hard as you can. Even I have no way to save it." Didn't the result be successful? Garen readjusted the injuries on his body caused by strenuous activities. Only then did he realize that he was still sitting in his car, and his sitting posture had not changed at all, but all the vitality stored in his hands had been released, and there was a vague feeling of emptiness in his arms, which made him very uncomfortable. "Comfortable? I feel like I will be killed by you sooner or later," Hessas concluded in anger. "Don't you worship death?" Garen shrugged. "That's them, and I'm not my main body. My main body died thousands of years ago. I'm just an independent memory now," Hessas said impatiently. "You have consumed all my strength, and we must replenish it." Although he was roaring again and again, Hessas's heart was indeed filled with uncontrollable shock. Garen didn't even have the strength to kill a white doll. He only had a moment of explosive power, but with just these 2 attacks, he was able to scare away 3 white dolls. This was completely beyond his expectation. The kind of person who faces his own destiny, makes the most courageous judgment immediately and takes action instantly, the kind of terrifying decisiveness, the kind of absolute confidence in oneself. At this moment, Hessa seemed to see the shadow of his main body thousands of years ago in Galen. Perhaps, he can really grow into the second king of slaughter. At this moment, the illusion that was supposed to be destroyed was surrounded by fire, and a dark round hole instantly opened in the sky. A white and delicate arm slowly stretched out and grasped the edge of the round hole. "Al, my poor brother," a gentle male voice echoed in the air. "G." Garen slammed on the brakes and turned around, the bloody shadow of the 9-headed dragon rolling in his eyes. At this moment, his eyes seemed to have transcended the limitations of some space and saw something slowly approaching. "What's wrong with you?" Hessa said in surprise. Garen was silent for a moment. "Nothing." He started the car again and drove in the designated direction. Somehow, he seemed to sense that something that resonated with his soul was approaching. This feeling of being uncomfortable with him was extremely obvious and clear. Aishiro gently avoided the scattered glass shards on the floor. She frowned and quietly raised her head to look at the stairs on the second floor. There were faint traces of blood on the stairs there. The wooden handrails of the stairs had been smashed at the waist, as if something heavy had been hit hard. She crept up the stairs, step by step. The smell of blood is getting stronger. But the strange thing is that the blood stains on the ground in front are getting less and less. When you go up to the second floor, you can hardly see any blood on the red wooden floor, but there is a strong fishy smell in the air. The room was quiet, there was no sound. Aishiro became more and more careful. She felt something was wrong from the moment she walked in. The door was only ajar, the things inside were scattered everywhere, and almost all the fragile items were broken. Suddenly, she turned around, pulled out the pistol and pulled the trigger, back. Boom. The gunfire rang out, and a black shadow flashed behind him instantly, and he didn't know whether he was hit or not. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 641. Aishiro didn't have time to think too much, he fired his pistol and instinctively retreated at the same time. Bang 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 bang. Holding the dagger tightly in his left hand, he drew an arc directly in front of him as a defensive attack. Shooting and drawing the knife at the same time, this has almost become an instinctive reaction. Aishiro's eyes followed the blurry black shadow and moved quickly. The pistol could hardly keep up with the opponent's speed and could only barely catch up behind it. Location. She saw the black shadow circle around the living room on the second floor and fly directly towards her, very fast and following an S-shaped evasive route. After missing 2 consecutive shots, she dropped the pistol and rolled on the spot to avoid the flying shadow. At the same time, she shot a dagger with her backhand. Without looking at the result, she hid directly in a room on the side and slammed the door shut. Come to your door. With her back against the wall, she quickly took out a few small black parts from her body. She assembled them in an instant with almost an afterimage, and then pressed them against the door behind her. Roll forward on the spot, run to the window, smash the glass and jump out, hanging on the windowsill with both hands. Just as she was hanging up on the windowsill, the small thing attached to the door suddenly flashed red. The black shadow burst through the door and entered the room. Boom! A violent explosion broke out instantly. The flames flooded everything in the room like a torrent, including the black figure. Huge heat rushed out of the windowsill, thick smoke billowed, and the house burned with fierce fire. What a beautiful skill! A calm male voice suddenly sounded beside Aishiro, with a hint of appreciation. She turned her head suddenly and pinched the opponent's throat with her right hand like a poisonous snake. Aishiro didn't expect it at all. She didn't even notice that someone was right next to her. Snapped. The fingers were pinched accurately, and then the other party gently licked them with his tongue. Only then did Aishiro see this man's true face. He is like an ordinary young man, clean, neatly dressed, and wearing gold-rimmed glasses like a barrister in the firm. He is polite and gentle, and looks at people with a trace of scrutiny. The black suit he wears is not the low-end kind, but the type with exquisite workmanship. This is a handsome man with fair skin. His eyes are dark, as if they are 2 magical whirlpools. They have some kind of strong attraction, making people want to stare into his eyes involuntarily. Hypnosis. Aishiro broke free suddenly. She twisted her body, her waist bent upwards, and she turned over lightly and returned to the room. But the man's movements seemed to be more agile and free than hers, and he followed her lightly into the room. The two stood opposite each other surrounded by flames. What a beautiful person! Outstanding and charming. Seeing you is like seeing my daughter back then, the man said with a hint of nostalgia. If she hadn't been killed by the damning party, maybe she would be as beautiful and as good as you now. Can vampires also have the ability to have children? Ishiro observed the other party vigilantly while responding to the other party's words casually. No, she is not a vampire, she is a pure human being. The other party seemed not to want to mention her previous experience. He looked at Ishiro. You are actually able to get rid of my control technique. It seems that you are not an ordinary human being. Ishiro always felt that the other person looked at her with a strange kind of affection, and this strange feeling made her extremely uncomfortable. No, you are mistaken, I am a pure human being. Really? The man smiled. My name is Lars, and I am the person in charge of the secret party in this area. I originally planned to just come here to relax, but I didn't expect to meet an outstanding girl like you. Ishiro felt something was wrong, and the other party's eyes became sharp, like the calmness of a beast before it pounces on food, making people relax their vigilance. Suddenly, she jumped to the left. Laugh. She heard the sound of something tearing from her original position, and had no time to look back. Ishiro put his right hand on the ground and swept his legs around like windmills. The heels of the pointed leather shoes worn on the feet were as sharp as the tips of knives. They spun at high speed and screamed ferociously. With two bang-bangs, Lars was hit in the middle. He quickly blocked with his hands in front of him at a speed faster than Ishiro. He did not expect that the opponent would make such an attack. By the time he realized it, it was already too late. His speed was so fast that he took the initiative to bump into her toes. 2 times in a row, his expression became a little ugly. The previous elegance could no longer be disguised, and a trace of impatience and severity gradually appeared on his face. 2 bloody holes were stabbed directly into his hand by his toes. Although no blood flowed out, being injured by an ordinary human was simply a shame for a true vampire. Ouch! He roared fiercely, turned into a black shadow and flew forward, taking advantage of the opportunity before Ishiro's recovery power was fully restored, to get close to him. Bang 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 bang. The two suddenly rolled into a ball, and their hands and feet exchanged ferociously. Ishiro was far slower than her opponent, but her attacks were precise and her predictions were astonishing. She seemed to have a terrifying acumen for danger. She was already there before Lars took action. It seemed that he had a premonition and reacted in advance, which made Lars feel uncomfortable. With a click, the two of them smashed through the wooden wall that was shattered by the explosion and returned to the living room. With a sneer, Ishiro's finger scratched hard on Lars' right cheek, and the venom just painted on the nail instantly invaded Lars' body. His expression suddenly changed. "How dare you!" he roared loudly. He instantly gave up his plan to play with the other party, and a powerful force instantly filled his whole body. His skin became as hard as rock, and his whole body took on an eerie gray color. The speed of his hands and feet suddenly more than doubled, and almost as soon as he raised his right arm, he hit Ishiro's shoulder. A huge force suddenly hit Ishiro's right shoulder, spinning her hard and sending her flying. Lars followed him like a shadow, instantly got close to him, grabbed Ishiro's throat, and raised him high. No matter how hard she punched or kicked, it had no effect. His skin was as hard as rock at this time and could not be broken by human power. Even if the dagger pierced the skin, it would only be a little superficial, and there would not be much damage at all. Lars could feel the poison flowing more and more in his body. He looked at Ishiro, who was being held up in the air, with a trace of cruelty flashing in his eyes. Bang! Suddenly, a violent explosion boomed from the floor a little behind him. The huge explosion force directly lifted Lars and Ishiro away at the same time. Ishiro took the opportunity to break away from the opponent's control, coughed twice and jumped towards the window. Suddenly, a black shadow flashed across her body and struck her down from mid-air. Bang! There was another loud noise, and blood oozed from Ishiro's mouth and nose. The stab-proof clothing she wore in advance played a key role at this moment, greatly reducing the damage she suffered. "Damn!" Lars' voice came from behind her. Aisha consciousness was a little blurry, but her years of escape left her unmoved at all. Instead, she decisively twisted her body and left her original position. The moment she rolled away, the floor where she was crushed and penetrated by Lars's kick. Finely chopped wood residue mixed with cement fell to the first floor. The house was already on fire. Aishiro didn't notice for a moment and rolled into a cluster of fire, and his body suddenly burned. Flames, rolling, roaring, the siren of a fire truck in the distance, and the miniature walkie-talkie on his body was blaring. All the sounds intertwined together in Aisha ears, as if they had become a mixed symphony. The scene when she was sparring with Garen seemed to reappear in front of her eyes. That inexplicable realization came to my mind at this moment, as if it was suddenly integrated into my own premonition ability. The air began to slowly flow around her, and after a few tumblings, the flames on Aishiro's body quickly extinguished, and Lars stood beside her at this time, pinched his neck and lifted him up. "Mortal! You actually made me suffer such a great humiliation. What an amazing achievement," Lars smiled ferociously. "Maybe I should make you my most cherished collection, and keep it till the end." A clear crisp sound interrupted his words. Lars was stunned in disbelief. He slowly lowered his head and looked at his chest. There was a slightly black arm that penetrated straight through, piercing his heart like a spear. The blackened skin texture on his arms was clearly visible in his eyes. The strange thing was that he didn't notice any movement at all before. He only heard a soft sound, and his chest had been penetrated, as if his vampire skin was completely useless decoration. Silent killing technique. Aishiro recalled the scene when she saw Garen perform this scene. There was no ripple in her heart, and her mind was blank. It seemed that there was only the moment when Garen's knife touched her forehead and between her eyebrows. With a bang, Lars let go of Aishiro, staggered back a few steps, his body flashed, turned into a black shadow and disappeared instantly. In the house, only Aishiro was left standing there with difficulty, staring blankly at his right hand, which still had a trace of Lars' blood on it. Silent killing technique. This kind of technology is really terrifying. For the first time, she felt that the image in her mind of the ordinary galleon seemed to be cast a mysterious shadow. At this moment, the sound of the fire truck outside was getting closer and closer. She came to her senses, quickly flew out, jumped out of the window, and rolled forward lightly on the ground, dissipating the huge force of the fall, regardless of the pain all over her body. Wound, quickly opened the door and got in the car. Arisa straightened up from her seat and screamed in surprise when she saw her sister covered in blood and with burns on her body. "Let's go," Aishiro said quickly. Arisa didn't dare to say anything, so she directly took over the task of driving, started the car and drove away quickly. Only the burning houses were left in place. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 642. Near Gollyville University. Galen encountered no other attacks along the way, and arrived at the house in the suburbs without any danger. It was already evening. Jay has already brought people over in person and just arrived here. Boss, a group of new senior executives of men in black, led by Jay, uniformly greeted Garen. Galen nodded, got out of the car, and walked into the villa door under the guidance of Jay and others. Several Nighthawk members opened the door for him respectfully and led the way across the lawn to an open space behind the house. There were several trucks parked in the open space, with black cloth draped over them, and they were full of people who didn't know what they were. "Boss, these are the goods we received this time." Jay lowered his head and said respectfully. He and several of his men quietly waited for Garen's inspection. Garen stepped forward and lifted a corner of the black cloth with the bright light of the lamp on the side. The huge black boxes inside were revealed. He vaguely felt from inside the box that a vague aura of potential was lingering around. After looking around for a week, more than a dozen of his subordinates spread out consciously and stood on guard all around. Their waists were bulging and their eyes were alluring. There are 3 trucks of goods here, with a total of 125 items. I will recover the rest as soon as possible, Jay reported in a low voice. Garen nodded with satisfaction. I believe you. Let's put all the things here into the villa. In addition, find more people to take care of this house. It's too deserted for me to live alone. Okay, Jay nodded quickly. After whispering a few instructions to his men, another group of people immediately walked in and began to open the boxes and move things into the villa. Vases, mirrors, tableware, oil paintings, and even very old music boxes, etc., all kinds of things were carefully brought into the villa and placed in one room under Galen's instructions. What do you want these artifacts for? Hessaz asked in his ear without explanation. The void creatures are approaching again soon, and you still have time to take care of these boring things. Can't you see? Garen did not answer, but asked casually. What do you see? Hessaz obviously doesn't know the existence of potential points on antiques. I prefer collecting cultural relics, Garen responded casually. The transportation of cultural relics was not completely completed until midnight. The group of people gradually evacuated the villa. Under the leadership of Jay, some people who guarded the villa were left behind, and most of the others drove back to the Men in Black branch. The Men in Black is headquartered in Africa, and the Nighthawk headquarters is in the United States because of Galleon. Either side can mobilize enough manpower, even elites. It wasn't until everyone left completely that Garen stayed alone in the storage room containing the cultural relics. He looked at the dazzling array of cultural relics, some of which exuded potential, while others were just ordinary antiques. It took most of the night to separate these antiques one by one, put aside the useless antiques, and take out the potential bronzes separately. Among them, the total number of antiques with potential values is 45, and most of them contain several potential points. Only 3 of them contain at least 10 potential points. One of them was a mask, some strange and ancient black and red mask. Garen couldn't even feel how much potential there was in it. He just felt it was vast, at least 10 or more, maybe 20 or 30. The timely delivery of this batch of cultural relics made him feel much better, and the injuries on his body seemed to be much lighter. Besides having some historical value as a collection, what else can things like cultural relics do? Hessaz said naggingly. Garen simply turned a deaf ear. Just by being in this room, he could feel that his body was continuously absorbing the potential breath emanating from the antique artifacts. He glanced at the attribute bar below his field of vision. The potential value was slowly and vaguely beating. Although it was slow, it was indeed increasing. He casually picked up a pocket watch, and the potential breath inside was quickly inhaled into his body. The cool air flowed into his wrist, into his forearm, then rushed up to his shoulder and went straight into his brain. The potential points instantly increased by more than 3 points. Moreover, there are still remaining potential points that are slowly increasing their input. It will take at least a week for this pocket watch to completely absorb them. Absorbing from antiques is not as fast as killing in the totem world, but this kind of treasure is long-lasting and continuous. Garen glanced out the window. The sky was slightly brighter, and the night passed by. The injuries on his body began to recover slowly in some places because he did not get a good rest. After looking at the various cultural relics and antiques in front of him, Garen simply didn't bother to go to school. He just lay down among a pile of cultural relics and fell asleep on an old clean copper bed. The fastest way to absorb it is to stay with these cultural relics every moment. Time flies. Fast forward a few months. Under the night sky, a white car slowly parked in front of an independent villa in the suburbs, and the automatic iron door slowly opened by remote control. Galen sat in the driver's seat and drove quietly into the villa garden, past the fountain, around a corner and slowly drove into the underground garage under the guidance of the maid. Bang! He opened the door and got out of the car. Slowly walked out of the garage. At night, the sky is filled with stars, densely packed like countless light blue diamonds embedded in the night sky. Garin was wearing a black slim-fitting suit and walked along the lawn into the door of his villa, which was brightly lit. Two people who had not seen each other for a long time were already sitting there. Quentin and Sidon. Both of them seemed to be concentrating with their eyes closed. When they heard the door opening and footsteps, they opened their eyes and looked towards the door at the same time. Seeing that it was Garin, they stood up one after another. President. Two honorifics sounded one after another. Garin has recently been busy absorbing potential points and practicing dreaming skills with great concentration. In terms of dreaming skills, he has been quite effective in concentrating his attention and clearly realizing that he is dreaming. To his surprise, this kind of training seems to it was helpful to his level of secret martial arts. As his dreaming skills improved, he felt that the level of secret martial arts that he had not touched for a long time had made progress. The killing hand seems to have taken on new changes, and even Hessas didn't expect it. Garin's killing hand was actually practiced under the influence of the Northern Halberdiers' cold flame true water evil technique. It is not a pure killing magic technique. There seems to be some kind of wonderful change in it. It is unclear what this change is. Whether it is good or bad can only be determined step by step. In the past few months, he had been attacked by white dolls several times, but as he became more and more proficient in dealing with it, the terrifying level of fighting realm above the King of the Century allowed him to find him in a very short time. Apart from the shortcomings of the white doll, it is easier to deal with the white doll, and with the increase in potential points, it can quickly recover from injuries. The moment he was able to stay awake and maintain his own consciousness in a dream, the 2 or 3 white dolls were worthless to him. If you can maintain your self-awareness, you can use your secret martial arts and power without any hindrance. It's countless times stronger than the passive attack. Even without the help of Hessas, he can now easily deal with several white dolls, fully demonstrating the general level strength Hessas once mentioned. In the past few months, he even killed more than 10 white dolls one after another. But all his energy was focused on void creatures, which also made him not pay attention to the normal affairs of this world for a long time. In this life of rapidly regaining strength and improving himself, everything else was put behind his mind. Now, his average physical quality has been continuously improved with the support of the continuously recovered cultural relics, and he has also accumulated more than 200 potential points. If it weren't for the fact that adding all of them to his physical fitness has no effect on the dream, he had already used it all to strengthen his body. It's rare that you come to me. Is there something more important? Garin asked the maid to bring 3 cups of green tea. Although he was in a European-style environment, he still didn't like drinking coffee. Drinking that kind of thing would make his mouth sore. Far less comfortable than tea. Quentin frowned slightly. This beautiful and hot girl was always cheerful, but now she seemed a little hesitant. Let me do the talking at this time. Sidon looked like a normal young man entering society. He was in a straight suit, dressed in grey and white, his hair was neatly styled, and there was not much left on his beard. President, we are here this time to ask you to mediate. Sidon's attitude seemed extremely serious. Mediation, Garin smiled. Now, because of the large number of potential points in the cultural relics, he has begun to quickly recover his physical fitness. His body has gradually begun to improve his average physical fitness. At this time, every move seems to have a powerful aura, as if it is gravity and unconsciously affects everyone. People's attention. What aspect are you talking about? He stared at Sidon calmly. Sidon always felt that Garin's eyes were like bottomless abyss whirlpools, and he unconsciously lowered his head. It's about Hosman and Dam. Hasaman and Dam, Galen touched his chin. Don't they always have a good relationship? At 9:20 last night, the two sides officially started a war. Sidon whispered, both of them were crazy. They actually shot and killed people directly in the downtown area. Both families are now at full-scale war. Damn, even the special police force was activated using connections, and here Hassan directly dispatched mercenaries. They are all adults and have their own persistence. In fact, at this level, my intervention has no effect. Once a grudge is formed, it will not be easily lifted. Since they choose to take action, they must consider all aspects. Here we are. Garen smiled slightly and said calmly. Besides, isn't this great? Strong men are never afraid of fighting, and fighting is also a way for our martial arts to evolve. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 643. Looking into Garen's unfathomable blue eyes, Quentin and Sidon felt a chill for some reason. This mysterious president, who had introduced them into the Supreme Martial Arts Palace from the very beginning, seemed not to care about the fight between Horseman and his two men, and even had a supportive attitude. Horseman was known as the dominator in what is now the northern United States. His strength once even broke a thick steel pillar in a violent rage, reaching a terrifying and inhuman level. After successively smashing to death 7 world-class boxing champions and famous underground fighting thugs, his reputation has reached a terrifying level. Someone once shot him head-on with a pistol, and the speed at which he pulled the trigger could not match the speed at which he sprinted and punched. With just one punch, the opponent was sent flying, and his entire upper body became in human shape. The visceral bones were mixed into a paste. Dam, on the other hand, is vicious and vicious, ruling his subordinate groups with terror and criminal law. He has gathered the most vicious thugs, murderers, robbers, and other top criminal talents under his command, and is known as Death Fist. Also, because of his terrifying, mysterious and cruel skills, he kills people invisible, and is extremely feared by his subordinates and enemies. He has a special liking for his men who are large and powerful, and has a weird habit of dressing up as women. The two have become veritable rulers of the underground throughout the northern United States. Its power is overwhelming, and with the cooperation of the two major families, it is unstoppable in terms of funding and officialdom. After all, they are the two strongest people in our fighting club, Quentin tried to convince Garen. Since the fighting club became famous, the members of the club have helped each other and formed a huge network of influence. Until now, over the past year, it has developed into a large-scale network system. As a member of it, everyone should help each other and develop together, so that our strength will become stronger and stronger. Both Hosman and Dam are the most outstanding members among us. We can't. So what? Garen interrupted her. It is natural for the weak to prey on the strong. This is their own choice and I have no right to interfere. Quentin was choked and speechless. You taught us and introduced us, that is our teacher, Sidon said in a low voice from the side. Now only you can stop the fight between the two of them. The only person in this world who can stop them may be you, Sidon said seriously. I beg you. He lowered his head and saluted deeply. Quentin also bowed his head and saluted. We can't just watch them kill each other. Please. Garen picked up the green tea and took a sip. Quentin peeked at this mysterious man from the corner of his eye. His every move seemed completely incomprehensible. He had shocking martial arts skills, and no one knew his origin. This powerful and mysterious man, under the influence of two disciples, with such terrifying prestige, he was gradually known as the boxing saint. But even if someone knew about his family and other information about him, no one could understand where his terrifying and powerful martial arts came from. Even if they are as powerful as they are now, both Hosman and Dama behave extremely restrained and low-key in front of Garen, and they still respect him very much. He was the only one who could stop those two people. Quentin understood in his heart, but she never knew that the person who really caused the two people to fight each other to the death was none other than Garen himself. Quentin himself knows how terrifying the martial arts she learned from Galen is. It is a way that seems to have no end, and can be explored infinitely. She has now reached the third level of Gen's Huanbaiyu, which is the level of transformation. Although she cannot go up to the fourth level, her strength is enough to defeat everyone outside the fighting club. Her own family runs a fight club, and she has a clear understanding of how terrifying the skills she has mastered are. After accidentally destroying two well-known boxers, she understood that the skills she has mastered are simply terrifying. His killing skills are battlefield skills derived from countless battles. There is no mercy, no kindness, only killing. Hidden in the beautiful and elegant steps of the biphasic water bird fist is a deadly murderous intention. Compared with them, Hoseman and Dam have even begun to create their own water bird boxing techniques that are most suitable for them. Their strength is constantly improving like a rocket, and there seems to be no end at all. It's a pity Garen crossed his fingers and placed them on the table. The biphase water bird fist is a boxing technique I taught you. In fact, after it reaches a certain level, it will be divided into two types, cathode and anode due to personal physique. Direction, only those with special talents can activate this trait. The battle between Yinji water bird fist and Yangji water bird fist is destined. Once they defeat and kill each other and fuse the essence of each other's secret martial arts, it has been elevated to a level that no one could have predicted. This was the first time that Garen explained the true meaning of biphasic water bird boxing to the two of them. Cathode and anode, that's why it's called the biphasic water bird fist. It was the first time for Quentin and Sidon to hear such an allusion, and they were stunned when they heard it. They always thought that there was some personal grudge between Haseman and Dam that led to such a deadly fight, but now it seems that all this was arranged by Garen from the beginning. As both heirs of the water bird fist, they actually only now understand the true secret of this killing technique. What is your purpose? Sidon raised his head, with a hint of suppressed anger in his eyes. Purpose, Garen laughed, do you think martial arts is just playing house? Power can be obtained casually without paying any price, or can you obtain such terrifying skills for the small price you paid? Don't be naive. The right path of martial arts has never been able to have such fast progressing martial arts, that kind of martial arts without sequelae. If they want to reach your level, they need at least more than 10 years of orthodox practice in years. So you think you are practicing? What kind of martial arts do you belong to? Garen said with a slightly sarcastic smile. Shortcuts come at a price, he finally said, and stood up. Okay, it's getting late, let's go back. Both of them were stunned at this time. They recalled the time when Garen first taught them powerful power, and then recalled the series of possessions they had gained as a result, and their hearts became confused for a while. I was asked out of the house by the servant in a daze, and I finally came to my senses on the way back. No wonder they have to come together to Garen every once in a while in the name of adjusting the progress of martial arts. Every time, Garen needs to personally check the progress of no one. Now it seems that he may be checking and eliminating the sequelae for everyone. For a moment, the two of them were so confused that they could no longer pay attention to Hosemandam's affairs. They needed to go back and carefully check their own situation. The small town of Glendo, in a cabin in the forest. Surrounded by lush forest trees, there was silence around the cabin, as if something was protecting and guarding the cabin built by the ranger. Are you crazy? Let two ordinary humans come into contact with Lars? That perverted lunatic is insane. In the wooden house, Preetu was sitting on the sofa. Opposite him stood an intellectual and beautiful blonde woman. She was looking at Preetu in disbelief. You actually handed over such an important thing to two ordinary people? I don't know what you have been through during this time, but such a move seems to me to be extremely stupid. The woman's chest kept rising and falling, obviously she was very angry. Light. I believe them, Preetu whispered, holding a cigarette between his fingers but not lighting it. Now Barton's pursued targets are you and me. No one would think that the thing is not on us, but there. As the Red Moon Clan, we are not afraid of the other party's median hypnosis control technique. Only you and I know this secret now. Proto quietly raised his head and looked at the woman. Then you are not afraid that they will be controlled by hypnosis? This is simply ridiculous, the woman said irritably. I tried it. They have strong willpower and have received similar training to resist. They can't control it at all, Proto explained. And they seem to know a special fighting technique and are very strong. No matter how powerful they are just ordinary humans. The middle-ranking vampire can kill them with just one look. Okay, the woman raised her hands. Forget it, I don't care about you, it's your decision. Problem, you are responsible for anything that happens anyway, and I don't want to take care of it anymore. You can do whatever you like, she turned and left angrily. Preto was left alone in the wooden house. He smiled bitterly and coughed twice, his expression becoming more and more miserable. Actually, I don't want to involve two innocent people, but I have no choice, and they have already been involved. Vaya, in Fenan City, not far from Grando, in a private club room. The room was dark with no lights on, and there was a faint smell of smoke in the air. Two middle-aged men in black trench coats stood in front of the window, one behind the other. The two figures seemed to completely blend into the darkness, as if they were just two sculptures, standing quietly in front of the window, their breaths cold. The operation failed. Two ordinary people were involved and went to the reception point instead of Preto, and actually injured Lars. It should be the work of other vampires. That guy Lars cares about his face more than his own life. Ordinary people have injured high-ranking vampires, and they are not afraid of being laughed at by others. If it is not possible, send a few more people over. Don't let it take too long. The local witches are very unfriendly to us, so we must be quick if we take action. Do you know Preto's whereabouts? It should be at Ka Enli's place. If you find Ka Enli, you will definitely find him. That's good. We have to act quickly. Other areas have almost been solved. We can't be left at the end. Yes.